Good morning and good afternoon to everyone. This is the third in our CTIS or Clinical Trial Information Master Series, which also, of course, includes the EU Clinical Trials Regulation. Today, we're going to manage this in a very different format. There won't be any slides. This will be a discussion with colleagues from industry who have experience with the clinical trial information system, have experience preparing to adjust their organization to meet the demands of the EU clinical trial regulation, have thought about that, have attended some of the training, have used the systems, either the live system or in many cases more the training system or the test system, just because it's pretty early on in the development. So today's discussion is going to be around table panel discussion, and all the panelists will introduce themselves in a second. My name is Thomas Wicks. I am the head of data and partnerships at the Trial Scope Disclose unit of Pharma Intelligence at Informa. And I am joined by Francine Lane. Francine, if you want to introduce yourself.
Of course, thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Francine Lane. I have been working with Thomas on clinical trial disclosure for nearly 20 years now. I think we're on 18 or 17 years. I've been part of the DIA as the chair of the Clinical Trial Disclosure and Transparency Group for the past few years, and I welcome you all to this webinar.
Thank you. And Emily, I'm just going to go around according to what I see here. Emily, if you could introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Emily. I have a background in academic medical research. I got my master's in public health, and then I moved into industry. I've been working at Sarepta for about 5 years now. For those years, I was actually on our medical affairs team, and I moved over to our regulatory team last year to do disclosures. And I'm looking forward to chatting with you all today.
Thank you, Emily. Katja?
Hi. My name is Katja Schöne. I'm working for Boehringer Ingelheim, based in Germany. I'm working for the disclosure group here at Boehringer at BI. Background is I'm coming from statistics, but now I'm already for 12 years in the disclosure group.
Yes, you're definitely an old hand, as it were, in this arena. Katrin, if you could introduce yourself.
Yeah. Hi, my name is Katrin Matern. I'm working for Bayer. My background is computer science, but right after university, I started in the pharmaceutical industry, and I'm working in the disclosure group of Bayer and in the disclosure area since, I guess, more than 10 years. So also quite a while.
Yep. Thank you, Katja. Rainer?
Yeah, my name is Rainer Faber. I'm working for Bayer. From background, I'm a physician specialized in laboratory medicine. I started in Bayer in corporate audit, doing audits globally in the areas of research and development and sales, and now built up a risk management system and working now in clinical trial transparency, and we have built up an end-to-end process in the transparency area. I'm responsible also for the interventional studies, the postings on clinicaltrials.gov and EU clinical trial registry.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, Robert. You're on mute, I think. No, still on mute.
And now?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sorry. Too many techniques. My name is Robert Yannick. I'm representing Merck KgaA, and I'm based in Darmstadt, Germany. I have the background in academia, so did my PhD in biology, a bit of tenure in the university, and then moved to the pharma side. Since several years, I'm heading the clinical trial transparency group at Merck, covering pretty much, not pretty much, all aspects of clinical trial transparency. And really happy to be today with you guys and hopefully answer your questions.
Thank you very much, everyone. So with that, just to give the audience a bit of a sense of how we will proceed today, we have prepared a list of discussion points and we'll go through those, and the panelists will sort of contribute on those. But this is meant to be as interactive as possible. So we encourage you, there is an option for you to submit questions. And what we'll try to do is, as we are discussing a particular topic, if you have questions to that topic, please do post them, and we will incorporate those into the discussion. So just want to make sure that there's no issues there. If you have any questions about how this might proceed, please put in your comments there. We also have someone from Workcast helping us out if there's any technical issues. So with that, Francine, if you could start us off with the first set of questions, and I'll be monitoring the attendee questions.
Sure. Thank you, Thomas. So the first question is with regards to the fact that CTIS is a brand new system, just went online a couple of months ago. What are some of the considerations that you found, or some surprises perhaps that you found as you were using CTIS to start planning and executing some of your clinical trials?
So Francine, maybe I can start. So what surprises? So we try to, let's say, lower the surprises. We run a couple of mock submissions using first of all the sandbox option, which were available, I think, since November. And actually, the first one was, I would say, was good, but we actually learned quite a lot. And second one we ran in January, so just before the pretty much go live system. The surprises what we have seen, I mean, the system behavior, so the sandbox, yeah, we actually were a bit disappointed that there were not full functionality, so you cannot really fully test this, and there are still some unknowns how the system will behave in reality. I remember it was interesting. We wanted to get the feedback from a member state, so it took us a couple of weeks actually that somebody from EMA or member state click the button so we can go to the next step. We learn a little bit, but yeah, we are actually waiting for some surprises, to be honest, how this will look like in the next 2 weeks when we will really make our first big submission.
I could add to that a little too. I think the biggest surprise for us was how many documents would be public that haven't been public before for at least us. So kind of something we did was put all of the documents that would be submitted into CTIS into an Excel spreadsheet, and kind of decided that we would kind of figure out the process for each. And some of those documents are handled by different departments as well within our company. So we would put in like who owns the document now, what's the current approval process, do we think anonymization or redaction would be needed for that particular document. And so we kind of started assessing each document that we have that would go into CTIS eventually, so that we can start planning for any process changes needed. And then, not a surprise, but the PLS was definitely something that we know we have to plan for. We've only done one as a company, and we've written other plain language documents for patients, but we haven't put it into a registration system that would be kind of off of our kind of networks and stuff. So that was definitely something that we've started to develop a process for as well in preparation.
Thank you, Emily. Just for clarification, a PLS is a plain language summary, in case anyone is not familiar with that abbreviation.
Sorry, just about that. Well, there's the plain language summary of results, which is kind of one of the big items. There is also the preferred plain language protocol synopsis, which we will talk about a little bit coming forward. Just wanted to check before you move on to another one. Francine, are there any other comments from Katja or Katrin or anyone?
No, I would also say the most surprising thing was that there are so many documents required, so more documents than data as we are used from other platforms.
Yeah. Thank you. Francine?
I was just going to say thank you, Emily. You gave a really nice transition into the second question, which you answered about the review and approval process. To at least consider that with your documents, maybe in a different way or in excess of what you're doing now. Does anyone else want to comment on that piece of it? I know, Kata, you mentioned just the sheer volume of documents that are required, but are you perhaps considering changing processes to make sure that those go through a more formal approval process, or maybe you already have that in place?
Yeah, what we definitely have to consider is to involve all these applicable stakeholders early in the process already to get everything done in time, also to ensure the data integrity.
Yeah, I think something we've noticed too is this is kind of forcing a lot more collaboration, which is actually a really good thing. But, more collaboration than might have been in place already. We actually put together a little CTIS task force within our company with kind of leads of the different departments that are going to be kind of affected by it, to get everyone kind of on the same page and pull together a process that works for all of the groups. And so we meet monthly and kind of go through. We've used a lot of Excels, I guess, but we've created an Excel with each article and section has its own, row or its own cell. And we've kind of evaluated the language within the regulation kind of down to that level as a group, and kind of decided, kind of doing a gap analysis, I guess, of does that fit our current process, or does that require us to change our process, or does that require us to create a new document that we haven't created before? So we've been kind of digging in at that level to kind of get through the meatiness of the regulation.
So we did something, similar and probably even more extensive than that. So we set up already almost 2 years ago the initiative, strategic initiative within the company, which actually dealt with those issues. And I personally led the initiative, which actually concentrate on the documents, meaning can we, let's say, simplify the documents the way the number, for example, of reduction required would be less than or maybe no reduction would be required. Instead of maybe CCI, we concentrate mainly on CCI PPDs. In some cases, it's not possible to avoid. And we did actually modify IBs, IMPDs slightly, but protocol and some other documents and process to reduce the number of CCI to extent possible. Some documents it was possible, in other documents, let's say, least possible. And also approval process. We try to simplify updated SOPs, creating a new one, so it's kind of lengthy process. One thing what we actually is, maybe back to the first question of your, Francine, and you know this very well, we quickly realized there is no really system in place available on this, that we can buy, kind of which mirror the CTIS itself. And there is a lot of manual work, like Emily mentioned, Excel spreadsheets or, SharePoints and so on. So to mirror pretty much CTIS itself, we have to build something within the company until somebody will create something for us.
All right, Thomas, do you want to move forward?
Actually, again, Emily, you transition, and Robert, to the next question very well. You've already anticipated it. Oh, I left myself on mute. I'm sorry. I just wanted to say thank you, Emily and Robert. You kind of transitioned to this next question very well, which is, as your organization is preparing, so the EU clinical trial regulation came into application in January of this year. It's still voluntary procedure until January of 2023, but your organizations, other organizations have been preparing for the reality and the SOP changes and so on. And you've both talked about having working groups. For those attendees who have not yet really dug too deep into this and started thinking about what SOP changes they must be making, and other maybe organizational realignments, could all of you speak a little bit about what you've seen in your organization? Who are the stakeholders that you're bringing into these discussions? What groups will need to be brought together to prepare for the first sort of the mandatory use of the CTIS system and the EU clinical trial regulations in January of next year?
So for us, we've pulled together a medical writing group, our ClinOps team, legal, contracting, and IP, a bunch of different folks within regulatory, from CMC, strategy, operations, the disclosures group, of course, PV operations, the TMF team, and then public relations actually as well, since so much of this will be public that hasn't been public before, and then also patient affairs for the PLS writing as well.
Thank you. And by the way, TMF, you mean the trial master file team, right?
Yeah, sorry.
No. I just want to make sure for the attendees. I think most attendees are quite up to speed. I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you, Emily. How about at other organizations you've seen? Have you had a group to work through that at some of the other companies?
So Thomas, if I can add to what Emily said, I mean, it's pretty much the same list as we had of the internal functions. What I also would add to that is business development and also the group which is dealing with the development partners of the compounds. So simply to inform them about the new regulation and how this may affect collaboration with the development partner, because this is another set of, let's say, review processes between partners and so on. So it adds additional complexity, actually.
Yeah. Thank you. And how about anyone else, Bayer or Boehringer? Have you had a working group on this?
Yeah, I think the one thing that we all learned here is that it will involve many people in the company. So that, as Emily said, there are so many different groups and they all have to be brought together, so that we have also set a kind of project or group that with different work streams trying to satisfy the different needs. And I think, I'm not sure if somebody's forgotten, but what Emily said, so this involves many groups: regulatory, disclosure, medical writing, clinical operations. It's I think similar at Bayer.
Yeah.
Maybe I add something to that here. So also with regard to the plain language summaries, we started very early, I think, more than up to 2 years earlier, to involve every party, to get harmonize the language, lay language used in our organization. For example, what is used in regulatory affairs, in these in their documents, in pharmacovigilance, and also in medical affairs, so that we have a consistent way how to present in the public domain, and that was quite takes a lot of time and meetings, and we have to discuss and agree on a way we want to move forward.
Yeah, I'm just curious for those of you who've had these groups. Just a quick follow-on question: how much time should people give themselves to do this? Is this something that can be done sort of in Q4 of 2022 in preparation for January of next year, or is this took 18 months and it's really late if you haven't started yet?
I would definitely not wait till Q4. I think I was even nervous that we weren't starting, last year. So I think as soon as you can start and kind of understand, at least at a high level, the things that you need to kind of dive into for your organization. Because I think as soon as we started, we realized how much we really had to do and how much we had to kind of unpack and talk through. So I think it's, taking multiple hours a month from various groups to prepare for this. And every organization's different, but I would definitely dedicate a lot of time to it.
Yeah.
I can concur with what Emily said. Yeah, start now, guys, who never start, because you will be surprised how much time this will take. And one group actually, which or groups maybe, which should be mentioned in this whole process, are potentially vendors, if in given companies using them, or local affiliates, if the documents, or there is the role of local affiliates in the part 2 documents content, then this is another complexity actually, which adds to the whole process.
It's a great point. So for the colleague from WorkCast on the line, this would be a good time to launch the poll. We have a question just about how ready people feel, and I think this is an appropriate time to ask that poll question. If you could post the poll, thank you. While we're waiting for that poll, let me just clarify a point. One of the questions, I think this was, you were saying this, Robert, earlier, about mirroring CTIS and why that would be necessary. Do you have some thoughts on that?
Yes. So mirroring CTIS.
Bless you.
Sorry.
Mirroring CTIS for us meant try to map functionality of CTIS to the process of creating the data fields, creating the documents, and making sure that the let's say group or people who will actually enter the information into the CTIS will know the field A belongs to the field A in the CTIS. So this is what I mean by mirroring. Otherwise, if you don't, I call it mirror. If you don't mirror this, you may end up in some potential mistakes. Simply the field A will be not copied in the field A of the CTIS, but for example to field B. I'm just making it up. So so this is what I meant by mirroring. Also the documents which are deferrable, which not, which are for the public, which not. So this is, and the Excel actually provided by EMA are quite useful, to be honest, for all the fields and requirements.
Good,
so
thank you.
They can be used.
And then, so thank you. And toggling back to the survey, I understand that it was displayed. I just didn't see it on my screen. If we could have the results displayed, is there a way for the panelists to see the results as well?
Hi, Thomas. I'll pop them in the chat for you.
Thank you. So we will have a look there. And yes, and if we can share that with the attendees as well so they can see the results, that would be great. And while we're waiting for those results to appear, let me just...
Thomas, I can give a quick summary of the current results before they're posted. It looks like there's some answers to all of them. Yep. About 37% states that their organization is relatively comfortable with their knowledge of the regulation. Almost 34% state that our organization is starting to review the regulation and develop their processes. Just under 20% is starting to review the regulation, is still unsure. There is almost 7% who haven't started yet. And I think the great recommendation from this panel is it should be on your radar soon.
Yeah, maybe this is the starting gun going off this webinar.
Yeah, exactly. And then a small percentage is just not comfortable with the knowledge that they have of the regulation at the moment. And quite frankly, I'm a little surprised that it's that low, because I think, well, here's, in my experience talking with different people, there are various levels of comfort with it. No one's really comfortable because it's new. You know, everyone is still working with it. And there's a lot of questions that are left to be answered, but I'm a little surprised that that only a little under 3% are still feeling really I'm going to interpret this as lost in the ocean.
But you can see you're in good company wherever you are in this process, unless you maybe are in an organization that hasn't done anything yet. I think this would be a good time to start. And just as a FYI, if it helps, Francine and I this is the third in a series. So the two previous webinars that we did, which are a little bit more structured in terms of using PowerPoints and having more of a sort of that aspect to it, those are recorded and available to you as well. Let me just pick one of the questions here, because already we talked about part 2 earlier. Are other sponsors planning on submitting only the part 2 documents required per the regulation, or also including other documents that the EMA, such as the biologic compliance with applicable rules for biological samples, or other member states like Italy requesting that the sponsor name an EC in the covering letter? So looking at that question there, are sponsors planning to submit only part 2 documents or also other documents as required?
I think our initial assessment is to only do what is required initially. Once we kind of submit a few of these and get more comfortable in the system next year, that may change, but I think initially we're only going to be doing what's required.
Yeah, we are planning exactly the same, so no kind of additional, let's put this way, documents at the moment.
Mm-hmm. And then since we're on those, sorry, I didn't want to cut anyone else off. I don't know, Katrin or Aina or Katja.
Yeah, I think pretty the same. I think it's anyway, the required things are so many, so I think focus on those first.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. And then one last question from the audience poll. Does any company already express the desire to start a pilot clinical trial, or was there any CTA already submitted? So this is a good question. Like, where of the speakers, where are you in using the live CTIS system, not just the sandbox?
So we are actually 2 weeks from the final press the button and go. So the last 2 hot weeks are actually started now. 3 weeks, sorry, 3 weeks. Apologies, 3 weeks.
Okay. Actually, Francine, that gets us into the next question quite well.
It certainly does. And that question is, do any of you have plans to pilot a study this year? And it looks like at least Merck KgaA does. And if so, how many do you plan on piloting in the first year?
We have right now 2 pilot studies running. You know, that is also.
Yeah.
And if there's maybe there will be an additional added, yeah, but currently it's 2 pilot studies ongoing.
Yeah, we are planning to have about 10 pilot studies. We started with the first one, preparing the documents for the pilot studies. We started with first with 2 small studies to get used to that. Small means not that major, with only 1 country. So just simple and uncomplicated.
Mm-hmm. Actually, if I may, a follow-up question to that, how do you pick the studies that you will pilot? Is there a sort of a thought which ones are suitable for test?
Yeah, as I said, for us, we took first the 2 easy ones, which we thought they are good to offer us to learn a lot, and then we have to see.
Yeah, we actually, the same as Katja mentioned, we try to look into complexity and pick the a relatively easy one. However, my suggestion, what at least we learn now, maybe the phase 1 is not the best one to do that. There's plenty of documents, there's plenty of potential risk of disclosing company confidential information based on sensitivity of the study. So maybe if phase 1, then they should be very carefully choose. So at least this kind of feedback from my end.
Does it make sense to pick a study that's a bit longer running so that the question of results might be deferred, like how to respond with results happens a bit later? Is that part of the consideration?
I think so, yes. It definitely is. It will come, yeah.
Yeah.
To avoid the transition.
Thank you.
Actually, that is a bit of a follow-up question from one of the audience members, and if any of these studies that are going in this year are going to be transition trials. And a transition trial, just for context for anyone, are studies that are transitioning from UDRA-CT under the governance of the EU directive to the regulation and moved into CTIS. So are any of you planning on transitioning any studies during the pilot period?
Not at Merck, at least at the moment.
Yeah, we're waiting until next year to do our first submissions and also transfer anything that's needed at that time.
Anyone else? I do believe I saw on the CTIS newsletter that the first pharma submission was a transition study, but I'm not sure who that was. So there's at least one group that has gone through a transition study.
Thank you. So let me ask the next question then. If you have already used the CTIS system to submit a clinical trial application or have used the training test system, what are some lessons you are learning for your submission? So, I mean, I guess it's a bit similar to what we asked earlier about like what surprises are there with the EU regulations, but as you've done some test submissions or pilot submissions, what are you learning that will affect how you do submissions, how the next few submissions will work?
I mean, at least if I can comment first. So first, what we learn is how much time takes to let's say, for example, do the redaction of the documents, how much time takes to create the data fields. In some cases, as you maybe remember from the regulation, some of the data fields, they have to be translated into different languages. So some of the countries required main characteristics fields to be translated. And other fields as well. So this is another complexity. So we learn, as I said, time, how much time it takes, how much, what kind of processes we have to improve or even create from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, many things actually. And I strongly suggest to do some kind of mock submission, if possible, of course.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. How about the others who have done a pilot submission? No?
So we have not done the submission yet, but what we learned when we went into the test system, that like the data entry was quite intuitive. I don't know if you agree, Rainer, because you said, or I understood it differently from your side, but also like things like the validation, they were available. And also EMA, they gave us so many training modules, so maybe that made it easier.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if it was different from when we started with UDRA-CT. UDRA-CT had so many bugs when starting. This was different now.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
One more thing, Thomas, if I may. The one thing what we actually realized using Sandbox, you cannot, I mean, we couldn't run the whole process from A to Z, meaning submission, some, for example, notifications, then at the end, publishing the results and plain language summary. So I don't think this probably would require some additional cooperation with the member states to get this process full done, but we were not able actually, for example, to submit the results or plain language summary, because then we couldn't actually move to the next stage of the study within the CTIS.
That makes sense. Yeah. You know what? Actually, I think the next question, Francine, instead of, because that kind of was just answered, the one of what we had prepared, but I think I'll pick one if you don't mind, from the audience member as a replacement, which is when you are deciding this. Let's say you have a new clinical trial application that's due in 2022 that you have to submit. How do you decide which process will you use? Will you use the EU Clinical Trials Directive UDRA-CT path or the EU CTR CTIS path? Like, what's your decision-making process there? It's similar to maybe how you picked the studies for the pilot, but if you have some follow-on thoughts on that. Maybe we already kind of went through it. Raise your hand if you have some thoughts, but maybe we did answer it earlier as much as we can today.
Yeah, I believe this may depend, from the each and every company, how they will take this based on the whole portfolio plan for the next years. More or less, I would say decision would not be bad to draw the line. I don't know, by if there is study by November this year to be submitted, then there is option to go either way. Plus, and after that, only CTIS. And how long the study will last, if this will, let's say, require transition the study, because then if this would require transition the study, doesn't make sense to submit this in the UDRA-CT and then later on transition. So I would look from this perspective, actually.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think so. Our study teams feel much more comfortable. You have to stick to the well-established process, yeah, and that runs smoothly, yeah, and pilot studies, yeah, were picked, yeah, based on when we were due, that we had a benefit from it, yeah, when we start early with this, yeah, we were close, yeah, to be filed anyhow, yeah, so, and that was more the rationale, and it's open, yeah, if study teams want to voluntarily go into the pilot, that is then discussed with them and they make them aware of what that means, and then they can also add it, so that is open. That way it was done.
Thank you. Well, that's useful. Francine, do you have the next question lined up, maybe?
Yes. Can you share some examples of the processes that you've needed to revise to prepare for CTIS? All of them.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, we, at least for the disclosures in terms of what's posted on, clinicaltrials.gov and the upkeep that we've done with that, we actually revamped our process last year. And so I think that was helpful because we're going to be able to lean on that because there was already kind of an establishment there. So we're probably going to just take on more and have to even hire, more folks as well to take on kind of some of the redactions and anonymization of the documents that we'll be uploading to CTIS. But I think we've been able to leverage some existing processes and kind of just tack on, I guess, more work to those groups and expand those groups as needed. So that's definitely, one of them. We'll also be doing some SOP, rewriting or changes for some of the document writing or approval processes, and also kind of reevaluating the roles and responsibilities of all of those groups that we mentioned earlier that are involved in these like CTIS workforces, because I think, some of those roles and responsibilities may change, they may stay the same. So we're also evaluating that.
Yeah, to what I can add, what Emily said, some items which should not be forgotten are the set of notifications, which are fairly new or very new. For example, serious breach or the third country inspection. So the regulation actually requires to publish third country inspection, including translation. So this, in our case at least, required the updates of some QA processes as well. But all of what Emily said is very true. There's a lot of processes which has to be updated and changed, roles and responsibilities. And I think for us, for the disclosure team, it's actually important to align the content, and this is some stuff which my team is working very closely, align the posting content with the CTIS content. So both will be at the end registries. So if we want or not, so we have to also kind of make sure that we are showing the same stuff on the both of them.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
As a follow-up to that, how are you training everyone on these new processes? Because I assume they're rather far-reaching.
So we've had various trainings. We've shared, overall kind of webinars on CTIS with the various groups just to kind of get some baseline knowledge out there first. And then we've also been working with a vendor and consultants to kind of work through our internal processes, learn, be able to ask questions as they're kind of a little more of an expert than we are. And then once, the SOPs are ready and the new processes are ready, we will be hosting, live trainings. We'll give everyone a chance to kind of read through any new SOPs for, about a month or so, and then we'll hold multiple live trainings. We're also going to hold like specific trainings for each program to kind of have like smaller group trainings with, everyone that they're going to work more closely with. And so it'll be a lot of training sessions, but we're kind of doing it in, big, medium, and then small as our initial plan for now.
I will say, just from my own experience, the EMA has put out a lot of training materials. Now it takes some time to work through it. What worked for Francine and her team and myself, what worked really well is we actually scheduled little like company internal webinars where we would do a screen share and go through the training one module at a time, watch it together, answer the questions together, discuss it. And then we didn't have to do it all at once. And that was a more interactive, more interesting way to go through it. But the materials are pretty robust. There's a lot of information there. So I would say it's not suitable for everyone. It's too much time for your entire organization to go through it. But the people who need to, we found that was a good way to go through the information available. Let me ask sort of a shifting topics a little bit here now. Since the EU clinical trial regulation requires the disclosure of a very wide range of documents, we've already touched on that quite a lot. Some of those documents may require redaction or anonymization. Is part of your preparing for CTIS and the EU CTR, part of that process also revising your document template? Sort of how are you writing your CSR? How are you writing your protocol so that it becomes easier? If you could talk a little bit about your thoughts there, that would be great. And Emily, I have you on screen, so if I'll pose that to you first.
Okay. Yeah, we're definitely looking at where templates need to be revised. We're also kind of looking at the timelines of how long these need to create. Our company works with a lot of pediatric studies, and we've gotten down to the wire kind of a lot of times with that 6-month time frame for results postings and all of the other things that are going to be needed to submit at that 6-month deadline, and realizing, we need to really kind of tighten that up as much as we can. So we've done kind of a look at the timeline, as well as creating a RACI for those that are, responsible, accountable, included, etc., consulted. So we've been kind of doing some of that work as well to have it be a comprehensive process, looking at timelines, templates, process all together at the same time.
So Thomas, we did revise already the templates, as I mentioned, so from protocol to AEB to IMPD, and some other documents. And this is really my recommendation. I know it takes time, but at the end, you actually invest very well time to save the time later. And this is actually, you can transition this to any for a future document. So my kind of take on this, we invest some time, modify the templates, write instructions, additional instructions, and then use those documents, the new templates accordingly. And of course, look for the feedback from the member states, because this is something what we actually drive potential, updates as well.
So, if I may, since we're on the topic of documents, Francine, do you want to take the next question, 8, and then?
Sure. The new regulation requires plain language summaries of results. If you have already started to tackle this problem, what was the most challenging aspect of writing the first few plain language summaries?
So, Emily first.
Maybe go ahead. Yeah.
You sure? Our process has been kind of brief, because we actually only had to submit one for the new UK regulation with their new final form. So it was a shortened PLS, because their form is really just an online form. There wasn't a lot of opportunity there was no opportunity to create graphs, which we would have wanted to do, but also no opportunity for formatting and things like that. So we kind of made a shortened PLS, but it did give us a chance to kind of run through the process with the team, which was actually a lot of fun. Like, we enjoyed it a lot, getting to write the PLS and getting to kind of make something for a patient audience. But it is definitely something we'll have to kind of build out a little bit more this year, because we did just make that shortened version, and it took probably like pretty close to 3 months to do that, with all of the reviews and approvals that we went through and the revisions. So our plan is to kind of be creating that almost ahead of time, before kind of getting some templates developed this year and things like that, to make it a little bit faster and consistent too across, studies, if they're in the same disease area with the same product. So being able to pull from other PLSs, internally will be part of our process going forward.
Thanks. Rainer, do you have some thoughts on this as well? I know you worked on plain language.
Yeah, the biggest challenge was to agree on a language used. Yeah, the problem is that everyone is at least a lay person, and has a specific understanding how lay or how technical it should be. Yeah, and then to convince other parties, to come on the project was a challenging also during review rounds. Yeah, and so what we made, so we compared it with documents. Yeah, where the other functions, for example, where authors, they demonstrated the same language. Yeah, or we go, some of this lay information is also electronically available for other studies on the National Cancer Institute. And we show, okay, that is displayed in that way. So it's better than to align our language with this public information of our products in the public domain provided by the National Cancer Institute, and by so then we convince them or find an agreement. And it's close collaboration and alignment. So and depends also from the study and then the therapeutic area, what they plan, what have they have in the public domain or in other countries, and lay information where it's not considered promotional. How is that designed? And that is that takes time. Yeah. So then and then it finally it pays off. Yeah. And we're working also on a glossary so that we can easily look into it and compare it and try to use then the same wording for other studies, that we compare it and ensure also the consistencies in this area, and also develop if new aspects came in, then we will also update it and put this new information in, especially with the medical conditions and the envisaged indications, how you write it, yeah, so that you don't interfere with other regulations, and also to be also with a posting of adverse event information, adverse reactions information. Yeah, we decided also to have adverse event information in parallel displayed. Yeah, so and not to be selective, and you have to find a way. You have to redefine everything up front. Yeah, if you're not to be accused to be selective. Yeah, and this needs an alignment. Yeah, with several functions. That are the most challenges.
That's a good point. By the way, I heard this as a suggestion from somebody who has written a large number of plain language summaries, to think during the protocol authoring process whether you at that point want to pre-identify which endpoints you will include in a plain language results summary, so that it doesn't become selected retrospectively, because it might not be all. For example, some say like we will only do primary endpoints, but some organizations say, well, there's some medically significant secondary endpoints that our participants may want to know about, but if you pre-identify them, that might be a process. So it's just a thought. And if I can take the next question, which is related. So the EU clinical trial regulation also talks about requiring a protocol synopsis, which is recommended to be in plain language. How are you approaching that? Like, what are your thoughts, and what are some of the challenges in preparing this protocol synopsis? Rainer, since you're on my screen.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, we do it voluntarily. Yeah, so and also we adapted it. We started also in the brief description on clinicaltrials.gov. Yeah, providing this information. Yeah, but then when this EU regulation came up, yeah, we broadened this. Yeah, so to mimic then the requirements. Yeah, from the EU clinical trial regulation. Yeah, and we also will things. Yeah, we also translate this in 8 common languages. Yeah, and if this 8 common languages covers not all languages of the population in the study. Yeah, so this will be also added. Yeah, that is right now we have done several of the studies. Yeah, in protocols in this regard, and also this was prepared based on the brief description and lay on the clinicaltrials.gov, and then optimized. Yeah, based on the recommendations. Yeah, in this language working groups. Yeah, to be prepared, and we will also submit this in the languages. Maybe the others. Yeah, if you upload a lay language summaries, then you have also to provide some these the translations. Yeah, that becomes then mandatory. Voluntarily is the initial if you submit one. Yeah, but if you start, then you have to provide the translations that you should be prepared for.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I think we'll use our, kind of template that we have for clinicaltrials.gov for the brief summary. But even looking at that compared to what we wrote for our, UK submission for that plain language summary recently, it's not kind of at that same like lower reading level. And especially with working with so many pediatric studies, we still kind of have to assess whether we're going to be making our brief summary, at an even lower reading level. But I did want to add something from the last question. So one of the things that I think really helped us in our plain language writing for this initial one that we did last March, the group that we included our patient affairs colleagues, which already do a lot of plain language writing. They know kind of preferred terms within the disease communities. They know things that they'll get questions on, or that we might want to preemptively answer, or, kind of hot topics within that study that patients or caregivers would want to know. So that was extremely helpful. And then we also included our medical affairs colleagues and our promo, like our promotional review colleagues that kind of review all of the content that goes out from our commercial team and our patient affairs team, because they see a lot of this language already. So they know kind of what, I know you guys were talking about kind of a little arguments and like how to, say something exactly. And we have a lot of that language kind of consistent throughout our company. So it was helpful to have that promotional review colleague on there to say, oh, well, we've typically said it this way or used this specific statistic or things like that. So just, sorry, I take it back to the other question, but it came to me later, so I wanted to mention it.
Yeah, one thing what we actually, I mean, you said we went even a little bit farther. So we are actually creating now the library of terms which can be used by medical affairs, but also by medical publication group and us. Mm-hmm. So when we are talking, for example, about disease X, we are talking using the same language across all potential, publications, because there is this new requirement. Some of the journals require the lay journal, let's say, document, so one pager. So this is something what the company can also consider.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Any thoughts from the other panelists on plain language summaries? No.
Oh, one more thing, Thomas, about this protocol summary. Sorry, there's this plain version.
Please.
I would suggest to also think about if there is really worth to do that, in the sense that if somebody would like to use deferral, then automatically this protocol plain language synopsis or protocol synopsis will be deferred as well at the same time as protocol. Yeah. So the patients may see this, let's say, I don't know, 7 years from the time of approval.
Yeah, but the language, do you think, can that language be surfaced in documents like the informed consent form, so that the participants at least will benefit from a thoughtful plain language summary?
Yeah, but informed consent, I mean, probably if this is phase 1, I believe that the company will decide to defer the plain informed consent as well.
No, but I mean, in the communication with the participants, you can use the language.
Yeah, this can be used, of course. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah.
So I want to be mindful of time. We have enough questions for another webinar, so I will not be so bold to say, let's all meet again next week, but I think we could definitely do that. I really appreciate the questions we're getting from the attendees. Francine and I will sort through them, and we will work to answer them, and we may reach out to some of the panelists for their perspectives. So don't feel if your question didn't get addressed that we've ignored it. It's just trying to weave this into a panel discussion. One housekeeping point for those of you who attended, or if your colleagues missed it, we will be sending out a link to this recording, as well as a link to the previous 2 webinars, the recordings, and I think there might be an option to download the PDF of the presentations that we had previously. So I really, really thank the panelists today. This has been phenomenal. I've learned a lot. I think it's always so valuable when you get real world feedback. So thank you very, very much. Francine, do you have anything else as we close out?
No, I'd just like to echo thank you to everyone for participating, both to the panelists and to the people participating. Thank you for your questions. They're really great to set context, and we'll try and answer as many as we can. Some of them are just not possible based on the amount of
and some might be harder to do on an open panel. I saw a question about what countries are not ready for the EU CTR, or which ones should we use as a reporting member state. Those are really valid questions, but I suggest those probably better run through some industry groups like FPIA, because I don't know if the panelists would want to say, oh, yeah, you should not work with the German health authority on anything, because that would not be helpful. So.
At least what I could say that, if you choose the country from your first submission, maybe try to avoid the one where there is huge number of translations required, because this is additional hurdle which we have to go through. So,
well,
if
that's
possible.
a good practical and neutral, value neutral suggestion. So thank you for that in closing. I wish you all a very great day. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye-bye.
Thank you very much.